with a lot of these elite profiles, I've been really going up in age as I've gone up from young players who definitely have the potential to go to turn into MVP players. Right now, I'm in the age where players are starting to show how elite they are, and that's when they're starting to solidify themselves as potential all-timers. They're actually starting to they're starting to qualify for all-star games, and they're qualifying for all these honors that's going to go down on their resume at the end when it's all said and done when they're under consideration for Hall of Fame. Players just like Javier Baez are players that are kind of at a crossroads where they're at that point in their career where they have nothing to lose from here on going out, where they can still make a case for being a Hall of Famer, and they're doing it right now, considering where they've started to where they are now. He's another young player who's in the midst of his prime, who has a definite chance of just winning, or of just being one of the most dominant players at his position and counting up accolades that'll eventually get him into the Hall of Fame. How you guys doing? It is Monday, July 13th, 2020, out here in this quarantine, and today for this episode of the Elite, I was going to go into Javier Baez, the shortstop slash second baseman for the Chicago Cubs, who is now, I think he's already made himself the face of that team, and he's basically asserted himself as one of the elite players within the National League Central, a very, very tough position to play in, and really kind of, or division to kind of just dominate and play in. So just to give you a little bit of background, Javier Baez is a 27-year-old shortstop coming from, I want to say, Puerto Rico, and he originally moved to the U.S., played in Jacksonville, where he was eventually selected 9th overall in the 2011 MLB draft. So, I mean, he got drafted pretty young. He eventually debuted for the Cubs in 2014. Just to give you a little bit of background. He first came in 21 years old. He played 52 games, finished with a 169 batting average with 36 hits in those 52 games. Wasn't incredibly crazy. His second season, he only played 28 games. He averaged 289. He had 22 hits in those 28 games. Wasn't really doing a lot, 4 runs. In his age 23 season, which is the first season he actually played, in 2016, he played 142 games, finished with a 273 batting average, with 14 home runs, 59 RBIs, kind of doing his thing. This was the year that the Chicago Cubs, this is the year that they won the World Series after beating the Giants in the first round, the Dodgers in the second round, and the Indians in 7, after being down, I want to say 3-1. And then Chris Bryant ended up winning the MVP, and Ben Zobrist was the World Series MVP. This is the first year that the Cubs started to become incredibly relevant, and this is when 23-year-old Javi Baez really started to become part of a team. He wasn't really necessarily elite or an all-star yet, but he started to become more known. His 2017 season, when he was 24, he played 145 games. He had 128 hits in those games. He finished with 23 home runs, 75 RBIs with a 273 batting average. When he had an OPS of 796, but he was good. Like at that point, he went from he'd gone from like a normal baseball player on a championship team to a pretty good baseball player. He became a reliant bat for the Chicago Cubs to rely on later on down the stretch, but he wasn't really elite yet. Come 2018, his age 25 season, he played 160 games. He finished with 176 hits. 40 of them were doubles. He finished with 34 home runs, the National League leading 111 RBIs, 21 stolen bases, with a 290 batting average. This is the first time he became an all-star. He finished second in the MVP voting, and he finished with a Silver Slugger. So, I mean, this is when, because prior to this, the only time Javier Baez had really shown himself as really being elite was when he was the NLCS MVP the year that the Cubs won the title. No, but this time he had finally been an all-star. He was an all-star starter, and the Chicago Cubs started to recognize him. I mean, he led that whole National League in RBIs, and the next year kind of showed that it wasn't a complete fluke. In his age 26 season, he only played 138 games because he was dealing with injury. He finished with 149 hits, more hits than games played, with a 281 batting average. He finished with 38 doubles, 29 home runs, 85 RBIs, with an OP he was on with a 316 OBP. But that was his last season. And if we're looking at Javi Baez right now for his line of work, he's a 27-year-old shortstop for the Chicago Cubs who people know now has a pretty good bat. He can hit for average now, especially. He has a lot of power. He can hit a lot of home runs. Depending on where he is in the lineup, he can give you a lot of RBIs throughout the course of a season. He's proven in the World Series. He's already won an NLCS MVP, and he was the starting, I want to say, shortstop on that World Series team where the Cubs won. He was a starter on that team. He's been an all-star the last 2 years. 2 years ago, he was the Silver Slugger and was the MVP runner-up in the National League. This is the type of player that we're looking at right now, whereas he wasn't really a phenom. He didn't have an incredible start. But we're talking about players as of right now. Javi Baez is among the top 20, I would say 20 comfortably, players in baseball. And there's a lot of good players. You can argue he's the best player at his position. I don't know who his real argument would be, but Javier Baez is definitely one of the top players in the MLB, and you should get a lot more respect on his name. Of course, this recent season wasn't as good as his MVP season or his almost MVP season, but the way I see it, he's 27, and after this quarantine season, he has a few more years of elite level baseball left. So Javier Baez is a name I'm gonna say for quite a bit while I'm still talking on here. And I appreciate you for listening to all 7 minutes of this. Just whenever you get a chance, if you get to see the Cubs play, whether because he plays in the NL Central, get a chance to check out my boy Javi Baez. He wears number 9. And yeah, he plays really good shortstop. Offensively, he can hit it. He can hit the ball a mile. He's a very clutch hitter. And on defense, he's one of the better defensive shortstops in baseball. You really can't get a lot better than Javi Baez. I know Cubs fans are really, really happy to have him. I know St. Louis Cardinals fans and NL Central fans aren't the biggest fans of him. But I know a lot of people that watch Javi Baez respect him as a good player, and they expect to see him in the next few All-Star teams. With that, I appreciate you. I wish all the best, and I hope you do well during this quarantine. Peace.